Hello everybody, it's Lazel here with another Magic the Gathering Arena standard video. Sadly, I messed up the last audio. I forgot to plug in my microphone, so I'm post-recording this audio here. I did a Power Stomp green deck in one of my latest videos, and I did a few updates to it simply because I got to know a lot more about the current meta and I want to do... And well, with that, I did a few slight adjustments to the Power Stomp deck. First of all, I added 2 copies of Tail Swipe. For Tail Swipe, I cut the Cosmic Hunger. I didn't cut all of the copies because Cosmic Hunger is great to either flip your battles in a fitting scenario or also to interact with your opponent's Shieldred. Then I wanna talk about Tail Swipe. I often found myself in the spot where I didn't have enough mana to simply cast my Cosmic Hunger to interact with my opponent's board. So this is why I added a few copies of Tail Swipe here. Gwenna is also a card that often leaves you with just 1 mana left, and this is why I added the Tail Swipe. Silverback Elder is a card that I simply added because there are a lot of enchantment decks currently out in the meta and they are just super annoying in my opinion. And of course, with Nissa the Ascended Animist, you do have some enchantment removal, but it still isn't enough and it doesn't come down that early. With Gwenna into Silverback Elder, you do have a nice way to interact way earlier with your opponent, casting all of those enchantment or artifact spells. Also, the second chapter here on the Silverback Elder also lets you place more lands onto the battlefield. You can also gain more life with the Silverback Elder, which is also super dope when you're facing, for example, Shieldred or also mono red aggro. And yeah, I think Silverback Elder definitely deserves a spot, especially also because it has 5 power, so it also untaps Gwenna. When you cast Defiler of Vigor, I cut one of the Defiler, but it's still one of the most powerful cards in this deck because, yeah, you get a discount, you can really ramp nicely with it. Fran, Breaker of Silence, is also a card that I found to be very powerful, especially in the current meta, because your opponents can barely interact with it. The only time that my opponent killed my Fran was either with Shielded in a trade-off, or, yeah, that's actually it. I also cut 1 land simply because I often find myself in a spot where I only draw lands. So I cut 1 and I think it's, yeah, pretty okay because with Silverback Elder, Gwenna, Invasion of Zendikar, you do have enough ways to find lands. And then I would say overall, let's talk about a few games that I have played. Alright, this opening hand here was just great for me. Played a Forest. Opponent on mono black, so I'm always concerned about cut down, especially when I play my Scrap Gorger here with an Evolved Sleeper. My opponent is starting off with a more aggressive version of the mono black deck. I played my Wayfinder, opponent is currently reading it. Especially in these scenarios, I'm always concerned about a cut down. Okay, opponent plays Tenacious Underdog. Great position here for Tenacious Underdog, simply because I cannot attack with my Wayfinder to maybe find a land. I could consider trading here, but the thing why I kept back with the Wayfinder is simply because your opponent has Liliana as a sacrifice outlet. Scrap Gorger is then extremely valuable if you can get your opponent's Tenacious Underdog into the graveyard. So I kept back with it, and there you already see Liliana coming down here. And let's imagine I would have traded here and now I wouldn't have a board left. This way I sacrifice my Wayfinder, which cannot attack anyways, and then I'm in a spot where I'm set up a little bit better here. What I now need to consider, I have 5 mana for the next turn, and I could consider going with Invasion of Zendikar to extend my mana advantage, but I am going for the play of playing either Vorinclex or Silverback Elder. I don't really remember. I think I go with Silverback Elder here. But I am afraid of the fact that my opponent has some removal. And yeah, but overall, if I let my opponent plus with the Liliana, they would still make me discard a card. And yeah, so I simply went for Silverback Elder here. Opponent level ups Evolved Sleeper. I am actually happy with that. That shows me that they don't have any instant speed interaction. Evolved Sleeper is now a death touching creature. We have to discard cards from our hand. And yeah, here I was considering to ditch either the Invasion of Zendikar or also the Boseiju. I think I did, yeah, I ditched the Boseiju simply for the reason that I will find even more lands with Vorinclex, so I don't have to be afraid of not hitting my land drop here. And yeah, this is why I simply went for the Vorinclex line of play. Scrap Gorger is also going to eat my opponent's Tenacious Underdog. Went for the second mode, eat Tenacious Underdog here. Silverback Elder finds me another land to the battlefield. This will be relevant later. And then Vorinclex finds me even more lands out of my deck. Also get to play it. And here, simply because Silverback Elder is currently a nice value engine for me that thins out my deck, I stayed back. I could have traded it for the Evolved Sleeper, but if my opponent goes for the Liliana +1, I will have to discard a card, which is fine. If my opponent goes for the -2, I can just sacrifice my Scrap Gorger here. If I would have sacrificed these, or if I would have traded the Silverback Elder, it would have been a different kind of problem. And now we were at a spot where I thought, okay, this game might be over for me, because my opponent just played a Phyrexian Obliterator, which will have to sacrifice me a lot of lands. I am mono-green Stompy, I don't have anything else to do. My opponent went for the line of play of sacrificing the Liliana to thin out my board, which is completely fine for me here. Evolved Sleeper attacks, which is fine. Okay, Evolved Sleeper stays back. I get to play another land. This will become really important simply because of the fact that I am looking to get as many permanents on the field as possible, so I don't take too much of a clapback here when I trade for the Phyrexian Obliterator. I do have to do it because this is what my deck intends to do, and simply by ramping and finding even more lands to the battlefield, I am able to thin out my deck and have enough sacrifice for the Phyrexian Obliterator. Here I attack with my Vorinclex. This is the line of play where my opponent sees, alright, I can simply get the Phyrexian Obliterator trigger, and then they are good to go. I have so much mana, and I also have my Invasion of Zendikar, which I will sacrifice to the Phyrexian Obliterator trigger. Here I just go for the invasion. Also, my opponent, in my opinion, did the mistake of not killing Vorinclex. They still left me with it. And yeah, simply there I go for another Silverback Elder trigger. I find another land to the battlefield. And this will also be relevant later. Polo-Kranos also great in this matchup against the more aggressive mono-black deck. But you will see why. Opponent channels a Takenuma. And here I was already considering, okay, they might take Sheoldred, but they actually take the Phyrexian Obliterator here. Opponent stays back, which is fine for me. Tyvar Stand here is just great, I can be really aggressive here, but I did a slight misplay here. I could have transformed Polo-Kranos first. I gave away a lot of life here, but I never really know, especially in this scenario right now, if I also could have just used Tyvar Stand to help pump my Vorinclex, for example. Not the best line of play, definitely. I played a little bit too fast here, of course. Yeah, and then my opponent went for these line of plays here. I just paid 0 to protect my Silverback Elder here because it is a great value engine for me at the moment. And then that also resolved. Get to keep it, also get to keep my Polo-Kranos, and now I get to flip it. If I would have thought about it a little bit more up front, it would have been a better line of play. But here I simply, yeah, maybe played it a little bit too fast. Opponent replays the Phyrexian Obliterator, but it's also coming to a point where Phyrexian Obliterator simply just doesn't kill any of my units. And here Beastcaller, great for me, simply because it also triggers my Silverback Elder again. Sadly whiffed here, but I can still go for an all-out swing. Very important here for me is that I want to kill the Phyrexian Obliterator. My opponent only has one card in hand, has the Tenacious Underdog in their graveyard. This is the only thing that they can currently do. The auto damage assign here wants me to kill the Tenacious Underdog. And I don't want the Phyrexian Obliterator to stick around even longer, which is why I switched the priority to the Obliterator here. Sure, I will have to do or sacrifice 5 permanents, but with 7 lands on the field and the transformed Polar Kranos, I'm totally fine with that. Yeah, I would just sacrifice... I think I sacrifice 4 lands here, and yeah. The thing is, due to the fact that I transformed my Polar Kranos, my opponent only has 1 creature on the battlefield, is down to 3. It's actually the best line of play to sacrifice 4 lands and my Polar Kranos, because of the transformed side of Polar Kranos. I will get 2 more tokens, and my opponent is now at the board where they don't have to fear the power of creatures, they have to fear the amount of creatures. And with 4 creatures on the field, my opponent has 6 mana available. They can just build a board here, and yeah, still at a spot where I can say, alright, this is one for me. Definitely shout out to Silverback Elder, who definitely carried the game here. And yeah, did a great job. Now I just have to go for an all-out swing. GG. Alright, next game. I do like this hand. I have everything that I need. 3 lands, Scrap Gorger into Invasion of Zendikar. I think this is, yeah, this is against mono red here. Also a reason why I am playing Tail Swipe. I just found that out, especially in this match right now. Tail Swipe can also be used on my main phase, of course, for the +1/+1. And Scrap Gorger can actually immediately go for the Phoenix Chick here. That's actually pretty good. Opponent did use a Lightning Strike here to finish off my Scrap Gorger. I found a backup one on top deck here, super dope. I have now 4 mana available, and also with the additional Poseidon that I just played, I have a protection spell for my Scrap Gorger. Opponent tries the same line of play. I protect my Scrap Gorger, which allows me to play my Invasion of Zendikar next turn. Alright, follows up with an Epicure. I draw another land, and then the line of play is pretty clear. I have to go for Vorinclex here, simply because of the fact Vorinclex is a 6/6 reach trample, and that also refills my hand. Super dope in this scenario here. And yeah, I'm at 16 life. I have a 6/6 on the field that can also block the Phoenix Chick, so I'm pretty well set up in my opinion. The game didn't turn out to be that easy in the end, but you will see why. Maybe I should have prioritized my opponent's resources a little bit different here, but overall you will see. Opponent generates 2 mana, plays a Radar Firebrand here. But due to the fact that I'm simply mono-green Stomp here, I also want to attack at some point. Tail Swipe gives me the option to interact with my opponent, so let's see how things go. I use the initiative here and attack with Vorinclex. Due to the fact that my opponent is an aggro deck, they also want to go for the risky line of play and simply take it. Due to the fact that my opponent is tapped out, I use the Tail Swipe to take out Radar Firebrand here. And then I follow up with an Invasion of Zendikar. I could have also gone for the play of simply playing the Beast Caller here to have a 2/2 on the field, but I want to thin out my deck and even find more win cons that can help me to get through the game here. Thundering Raiju, very threatening here. And my opponent, yeah, keeps just plussing Chandra. Reasonable line of play here, do I have to say that? Deals 1 damage, totally fine.
Watch me heat up the dance floor.
Then goes for another attack. I take it. I want to keep the Scrap Gorger here. Go down to 8. Find Tyvar Stand. Really good. I could have also... I think what my line of play will be, I go for the Invasion, if I remember correctly. Could have also taken out Chandra here. But currently I'm thinking Vorinclex can go after Invasion of Zendikar. I will get another creature onto the battlefield, a 4/4 Vigilance Haste, which will also give me 1 more mana. And then I can also flip Vorinclex. Still have mana available for Tyvar Stand or also the Beast Caller. depending on what I hit. And now let's go for the ability, flipping Vorinclex here, returning it, milling 10, putting every creature or 2 creature cards onto the battlefield. I just go for the strongest creatures that I can find. Actually, I went also for Polukranos here. Both enter at the same time. Counter goes onto Polukranos. Polukranos is now a 5/6 reach, which I think is, yeah, simply very powerful. And then I will end my turn here simply to keep Tyvar's stand up. I am down to 8, which is definitely really scary here. But if I get to my next turn, I can win. Okay, opponent pluses Chandra. I would have considered to use the other plus ability, but I also don't know what my opponent has in hand. Alright, Shivan Devastator. Here I thought, okay, this might be game over. But I'm still at a good spot. I will survive. Because my opponent goes for an all-out swing here. Puts the counter, I think they put it onto the Phoenix chick. Yep. I take 2, Polukranos can block the Shivan Devastator. Zurak and Goreclaw block the Raiju, Epicure gets blocked. And then I'm good to go. I only block like this because my opponent is completely tapped out. And now my opponent dies on the way back. We still get to distribute 7 +1/+1 counters. But my opponent already gave up. Super dope game. But still very close. Alright, I'm on the draw. I like this hand. Got a turn 2 play, turn 3 play. Opponent starts off with the... I think it's Sulfur Falls, I don't really remember. Already in Grixis colors, but you gotta play it. We are a very simple deck, we do simple things. Play Beastcaller. This line of play I already thought was... gave me a lot of information. They played an Otawara here, which shows me, okay, they don't have many land options in hand. Okay, starts off with a Fable here. We drew the Filer of Vigor, great card. And I simply went for a Bloated Contaminator. Turn 3, a 4/4 trample. Pretty solid. Sadly don't have any protection up, but there was no other line of play that I could have gone for that would have really paid off. I would have played really defensive. Okay, this already told me, okay, my opponent is a Reanimator deck. Because they just binned Itali and Atraxa. Those are the common reanimation targets in the current meta. But that also told me that they play Nahiri's Warcrafting, which we will see now. Yep. The thing about Nahiri's Warcrafting is it deals a lot of damage and can give them card advantage, as it just did. It gave them the mountain that they needed. And with the Goblin attack that is now about to come in, that's already the point where I knew, okay, they can reanimate something next turn. Which was just really scary for me, because I'm at a point where I don't have my Defiler on Bigger on board. I was simply on the draw, which is definitely hard for the mono-green Stompy deck. But here, that was an interesting line of play. That also gave away a lot of information, because they go for the throat, opt for sacrifice their treasure token, which is simply telling me, alright, I can ditch in a little bit more damage here by paying a little bit more. And as I've said, they do have the point of not having a reanimation spell. If they would have had a reanimation spell, they maybe not would have done the line of play they just did, because with 5 mana they can do it. And that also tells me what's currently happening, that they don't have another land. They probably would have played it first main phase, could have also used their reanimation spell here. But yeah, I kept it a little bit aggressive there. Try to interact with the token before they were able to attack. Here they find, they play another Nahiri's Warcrafting, found a tapped land, and now I know, okay, they have 5 mana available. But I still have the information that my opponent doesn't have the reanimation spell, which is why I simply go for Defiler of Vigor here. It's the only thing that I can do. And the only thing that I can currently simply do is raise my opponent. That's the only thing that helps. And I can only hope that they don't have the reanimation spell. Alright, Harvester. The problem about Harvester in this scenario here is simply that my opponent can immediately copy it with the Reflection, which is like 6 power, and that can immediately kill or trade for my Defiler of Vega here, let's say it like that. Here I drew a Cosmic Hunger, very valuable in this spot. Still went for it. There is definitely a world how this can work, but here I was very surprised that my opponent simply took it. I was expecting them to make a copy of the Harvester here and then try to double block. Then I would have had to use my Cosmic Hunger for one of the Harvesters. They make another token. I kill the Reflection. And the Reflection also sacrifices the token. One line of play how my opponent can win is by having another Harvester or with having a reanimation spell here. They digged really deep with sacrificing both of their blood tokens, and I think this is a spot where I do have to say I was just really lucky here, because my opponent didn't find anything within the top 3 cards of their deck. But what they found is a Bankbuster. They used the Bankbuster to find even more in their deck, which was just really surprising to me that they haven't found anything yet. But I also don't know the whole deck list of the reanimation deck. Place another Fable. The problem here is that my opponent now has 4 toughness on the field, my Defiler has 6 damage, which means they are 1 damage short, but here I had a top deck the Tail Swipe, that gives me in my main phase +1/+1. Can also take out the Harvester, which also loses my opponent even more toughness on the field, and then I was able to go for the final swing. GG. Time for the promo match. Yeah, this hand I simply couldn't keep. Way too much top end, no ramp. This hand here, way better. I was considering how to play it because I needed the Scrap Gorger, I needed the Invasion of Zendikar, and Defiler of Vega would have been a great follow-up. But I know since I'm on the play, I cannot protect my Scrap Gorger in turn 2 anyways, which is simply why I did the Typer Stand and went for the risky play here. Found another land, which was super helpful. Here my opponent, there I was already afraid of an ossification, but they play a soldier deck, Guardian of New Benalia. We got a Nissa out of it, super dope as a top end creature, or top end planeswalker. Invasion of Zendikar, find 2 basic lands to the battlefield. We already have accumulated 6 mana here. The card that I'm always afraid of in this matchup is Brutal Kafar. But the new, I think Copper Court is called, also does a lot of work, taking 3 from the Guardian. Found another land, super dope, because now I was able to play Defiler and also follow up with the Bloated Contaminator. Build a nice board state, also with creatures that have, yeah, definitely impact on the battlefield. Defiler pumping up the team. But as I've said, still afraid of the Brutal Kafar here. Nissa can already come down next turn for 7. This was really interesting. My opponent plays Anointed Peacekeeper here. Of course, they find Nissa and make him more expensive. Makes sense. Follows up with a Hopeful Initiate. Here I draw another forest. And here I had to really count a lot, because Nissa got 2 more expensive. I can pay 3 total with the Phyrexian mana. And usually Nissa costs 7, gets 2 more priced up with the Anointed Peacekeeper, which makes it 9. I can discount 3 with Phyrexian mana, and this is simply what I went for. But I tested this out first. This is already a great thing about casting costs. You can still, all the system blocks you from if you cannot simply pay it. Nissa resolved, but here's the interesting thing. I couldn't activate her loyalty ability because that's what I forgot about the Anointed Peacekeeper. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name cost 2 more to activate, and that immediately locked out Nissa from activating her loyalty ability. But I still got the profit out of her by simply putting more counters onto my creatures. And because the Invasion of Zendikar is a cast, I went for it and was simply hoping that my Defiler of Vigor survives. But the thing is, if my opponent trades for my Defiler of Vigor, I'm also happy with it, because my opponent has more creatures on the battlefield, but those are way weaker than the Defiler of Vigor, so I would have gone for a really big trade there. And my opponent also would have had to block with the Anointed Peacekeeper, and if they would do that, that would mean that I can activate my Nissa's ability again. And also, if you cannot use her ultimate, her simple +1 makes you, in this scenario here, an 8/8 token. And an 8/8 token is really powerful, especially against a deck with not that much interaction apparently. I expect from my opponent to play Lay Down Arms, Brutal Kafar, and maybe in the worst case Ossification. This is something that I simply didn't understood. I didn't see the line of play why Anointed Peacekeeper was was back, but I still have enough power anyway, so I don't really care. I sure lose my Bloated Contaminator here, but I also kill 2 very important creatures of my opponent. Well, most likely just the Anointed Peacekeeper. I get to cast my Skyclave here for free, which also puts more +1/+1 counters on my creatures. Skyclave. Alright, and now I can use Nissa's ability, plus her, and make an 8/8 token.
Must be nurtured.
So even if my opponent has a Brutal Kafar for the token, I still have a 9/9 trample on the battlefield. So I feel pretty safe at my current spot. What I also like lately is especially taking the time to show these tokens here. And this was super cool because my opponent just played a Phyrexian Vindicator, where I was like, okay, this thing, if I don't do it right, can simply kill me because the damage gets prevented. The thing about Trample, on the other hand, is you only need to assign that much damage until it kills the creature. So it would have prevented 5 damage and then I would have still been good to go. But also the thing is, if your opponent dies, you are still at the spot that the ability goes onto the stack and you're still good to go. Armored Scrapgorger here simply to get another Defiler trigger. Pump up the whole board. Go for the Nissa ultimate. And then swing in with, yeah, let's see, 17, 18, 40, 56, yeah. Sadly my opponent surrendered here, but okay. Would have been great to go for the all-out attack. And we are back into Platinum. Alright guys, this was the recap. I definitely have to give a shout out to the Silverback Elder. Super dope card, and in the matchup against the Phyrexian Obliterator, it just kept refilling my board with the lands that I needed to sacrifice against the Phyrexian Obliterator, so that definitely helped out a lot. Super dope card, and as I've said, with 5 mana, when I can pay for it, you can also destroy artifacts or enchantments. In these 3 matches that I had recorded, we didn't find anything of the enchantment deck that's currently very powerful in the meta because of the new Calyx. But yeah, overall Silverback Elder does a good job here. You gain for life, something that I haven't used, but it's pretty good. Tailswipe also did a bit of work here in this deck. Still, Cosmic Hunger, yeah, both things are definitely reasonable. Armored Scrapgorger, such a cool card, and I think it definitely deserves also a shout out here because it's a great mana dog here. As a 0/3, it doesn't look like much, but it can do a lot of work, especially if you can ram into an Invasion of Zendikar. Defiler of Vigor, in my opinion, one of the MVP cards here in the deck, because especially with Gwenna, Both have a great synergy with each other, and that simply sums up the deck. Very powerful. I was very happy that I was once able to flip Vorinclex here, because this is something that you don't see that often, but the Grand Evolution first chapter is really powerful. I have also been in other games to the third chapter, but it doesn't do that much in my opinion. But overall, it was just super fun. I hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.